The alien warrior crouched behind a jagged outcrop, his twin hearts pounding in his chest. The battlefield was silent now, save for the distant crackle of flames and the occasional groan of shifting metal. His squad was gone slaughtered. It had happened too fast, too efficiently. They had trained for years, studied 100 enemy species, mastered thousands of combat scenarios. And yet, nothing had prepared them for this. For them. He activated his visor, scanning the ruins for movement. His kind had conquered entire star systems, reducing civilizations to dust. Their dominance had never been challenged until now. He had heard the whispers, the warnings from those who had encountered them before. The humans. A species classified as primitive, confined to a single planet for most of their existence. But that had been a mistake. They had spread, adapted, and worst of all, they had learned. A flicker of movement. He froze. His mandibles clicked as he scanned the shadows between the wreckage. There was nothing there. But the story said that meant nothing. The humans could hide where no other predator could. Not just with technology, but with instinct, with patience. They were the only species in the galaxy known to hunt for sport, to track their prey, for the thrill of it. He gripped his weapon tighter. His species had been bred for war, engineered for it. But the humans, they had evolved for it. A soft sound to his left, so quiet it could have been his own breathing. He spun, firing into the darkness. The plasma rounds hit nothing but twisted metal. His breathing quickened. His training told him to move, to reposition. But his instincts screamed at him to stay still, to listen. And then he felt it. The presence. Not in front. Not behind. Above. His head snapped up, just in time to see the human dropping toward him. No armor, no advanced weapons, just a blade gripped tight in a scarred hand. His mind barely had time to process the absurdity of it. Who used a blade in a war fought with plasma and railguns? Who closed the distance when they could kill from a mile away? But that was the real horror of humanity. They wanted to be close. The impact was brutal. The blade drove deep, bypassing his armor as if it were paper. The force of the strike sent him sprawling, his vision blurring. He struggled to move, but his limbs were heavy, his strength failing. He tried to understand, to process how a mere human had moved so quickly. But then he saw the eyes. Cold. Calculated. Hungry. The human leaned in close, voice barely above a whisper. "You were never the predator," he said. The alien's vision faded to black. And somewhere, hidden in the wreckage, more eyes watched. More humans, waiting. The body hit the ground with a dull thud, but the human didn't move. He stayed still, blade dripping, breath controlled. The first kill was never the last. Somewhere in the wreckage, something shifted. A faint scrape of metal against stone. It wasn't human too slow, too deliberate. Another one of them was still out there. Watching. Calculating. He knelt beside the fallen warrior, fingers brushing against the alien's weapon. A sleek, energy-based rifle, built for precision, useless in close quarters. That was their weakness. They relied too much on distance, on technology. That's why they lost. That's why they always lost. A whisper of wind passed through the ruins. The air smelled of scorched earth and burning metal. Still no movement. But he knew they were waiting. Testing. They had learned their lesson. A frontal attack wouldn't work. They'd try something different now. Good. He wanted them to. He crouched lower, muscles coiled, scanning the broken battlefield. The war hadn't started this way. It had begun as a slow burn, a distant conflict, one humanity was told to stay out of. The galactic empires had fought their wars in the shadows, on distant worlds, over resources and power. Humans weren't a threat. Just a species too stubborn to stay in their lane. And then someone made a mistake. A Dominion fleet had wiped out a human colony. A warning, they called it. A display of strength. Standard procedure. It should have ended there. But they had miscalculated. Because humans didn't just fight, they adapted. The war that followed wasn't like the others. It wasn't fought in neat, organized battles. The humans didn't engage in long, drawn-out campaigns. They didn't fight for territory or resources. They fought to end it. Every strike was precise. Every tactic designed to break the enemy from the inside. Their fleets were smaller but faster. Their soldiers fewer but deadlier. They didn't conquer planets. They made them unlivable. They didn't win battles. They made sure the enemy never got the chance for another. And now, here, on this forsaken world, the remnants of another once mighty force were learning that lesson firsthand. Another sound. Closer this time. He turned slowly, gripping his blade tighter. The darkness shifted, something moving in the wreckage. Not running. Stalking. Smart. They had learned from the last one. They wouldn't rush in blind. But that didn't mean they were ready. A shadow lunged. The human sidestepped, blade flashing. The strike missed by inches, his attacker twisting in midair, landing low in a crouch. This one was different. Taller. More refined. Not just another soldier. A commander, maybe. The way it held itself, the way it moved careful, deliberate. Studying him. Good. They locked eyes, neither making the first move. The alien's weapon hummed with energy, but it didn't fire. It knew what would happen if it missed. And it would miss. The silence stretched. A test. A moment of understanding. Then the alien spoke. "We misjudged your kind." Its voice was calm. Not afraid. Not pleading. Just acknowledging. The human tilted his head slightly. Yeah. A pause. And now, a flicker of hesitation. The smallest shift in stance. Now, the alien said, "We learn." And then it attacked. Fast. Faster than the last one. A blur of motion, weapon swinging. But the human had already moved. He ducked, rolling under the strike, the heat of the energy blade grazing past his shoulder. Close, but not close enough. He came up behind the alien, slashing upward, aiming for the weak point at the base of the skull. But the alien was fast too, spinning at the last second, deflecting the blade with a sharp clang. The two circled each other, both breathing hard now, both calculating. The alien exhaled slowly. "You don't fight like the others." The human smirked. "Neither do you." Another beat of silence. Then the ground trembled. A deep, distant rumble that sent vibrations through the wreckage. Both fighters froze. That wasn't them. That wasn't part of the battle. Something else was coming. And for the first time, the humans saw it. The look in the alien's eyes. Not anger. Not calculation. Fear. The kind that meant only one thing. Whatever was out there was worse than both of them. And it was getting closer. The rumbling grew louder. It wasn't the sound of machinery or weapons. It was something heavier, something alive. The human and the alien warrior both turned their heads slightly, their fight momentarily forgotten. Then, from the far end of the ruins, the ground split apart. Chunks of stone and metal erupted into the air as something massive forced its way up from beneath. The human didn't flinch, but he stepped back instinctively. The alien warrior did the same, its grip on the weapon tightening. A shadow stretched over the battlefield. A shape, hulking and unnatural, rose from the dust. It was no Dominion soldier. No war machine. This was something older. Something both human and alien recognized immediately as wrong. The human had seen a lot of things in this war, creatures bred for slaughter, weapons designed to erase entire cities, beings that existed only to kill. But whatever this was, it wasn't like the others. It didn't move like something that belonged here. It was watching them. The alien warrior's stance changed. The earlier confidence was gone, replaced by something sharper. A readiness for survival, not combat. "You've seen this before," the human said quietly. The alien's grip tightened. "Not like this." A second tremor shook the ground, and the creature moved slowly, deliberately, as if testing the air. Then, without warning, it lunged. The human reacted first, diving to the side, narrowly avoiding the massive limb that crashed into the ground where he had stood. The alien was fast too, rolling away as debris scattered. The creature twisted, adjusting. It wasn't mindless. It learned. The human met the alien's gaze again. There was no time for questions, no time for alliances. Only instinct. Both moved at the same time. The human sprinted low, weaving through the wreckage, searching for cover, for anything that could be used against it. The alien did the same, its movements more practiced, more fluid. The creature tracked them both, but it hesitated two targets, two unknowns. It didn't know which to kill first. That hesitation was the only advantage they had. The human ducked behind a collapsed wall, scanning his gear. Blade useless. Pistol low power, not enough to stop something that size. He needed something bigger. The alien was already moving toward higher ground, leaping onto a broken support beam, weapon raised. But the creature was fast. Too fast. It twisted toward the alien and moved. Not lunged. Not ran. It shifted, like something warping through reality itself. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't, and when it reappeared, it was inches from the alien's position. The alien barely managed to leap away as the structure shattered beneath its weight. It landed hard, rolling to its feet, but there was no time to recover. The creature was already adapting, already adjusting. The human didn't wait. He bolted toward the wreckage of an old Dominion drop pod, tearing open the side panel. There, an old energy core, half exposed. Maybe unstable. Maybe dangerous. Didn't matter. The alien saw what he was doing. That won't stop it. It doesn't have to, the human shot back. Just needs to slow it down. The alien hesitated, then nodded. No argument. No pride. Just survival. The human ripped the core free, feeling the heat pulse through his gloves. The creature turned toward him now, sensing the shift, sensing something new. Then it moved again. The human threw the core just as the creature reappeared. The impact wasn't an explosion, not in the traditional sense. It was a pulse, raw, unstable energy that ripped through the air. The creature recoiled, its form flickering. Not wounded, just disrupted. But it was enough. The alien moved first, striking while it was disoriented. Its energy weapon flared, a precise shot aimed at whatever passed for the creature's center mass. The bolt struck. The first time, the thing reacted. It staggered, shifting again, but it felt the hit. The human wasn't far behind. He didn't have high-tech weapons, but he had experience. He moved fast, closing the distance, driving his blade into what he hoped was a weak point. The metal met resistance, but then give. A sensation like cutting through something that wasn't entirely solid. The creature twisted violently, shrieking not a sound, not a voice, but something deeper. Something that rattled inside his skull. The human ripped his blade free just as the creature flung him backward. He hit the ground hard, rolling as dust and debris filled the air. By the time he looked up, it was already recovering. They hadn't killed it. They had only made it angry. And this time, there would be no hesitation. The creature's form flickered again, like a mirage caught between two realities. Its body pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, adapting, recalibrating, learning. Whatever damage they had managed to inflict was already being undone. The human wiped the dust from his face and pushed himself to his feet, heart pounding. The alien warrior beside him didn't speak, but the tension in its stance said everything. They had seconds, maybe less, before the creature struck again. Then it moved, faster than before. No hesitation this time. It had studied their attacks, understood their limits. It lunged straight at the alien, choosing its target with precision. The human reacted on instinct. He grabbed a broken rifle from the debris, raised it, and fired. The energy cell was half dead, the shot weak, but it was enough to force the creature to twitch, just for a fraction of a second. The alien used that moment to roll aside, barely avoiding the crushing impact. The ground cracked beneath the force of the creature's strike, sending shockwaves through the ruins. The human knew they couldn't keep this up. It was too fast, too unpredictable. The small victories they had won meant nothing if they didn't find a way to end this. His mind raced. There had to be something, some weakness, some flaw. Every predator had one. Even the deadliest hunters could be outmaneuvered if you understood what made them tick. The creature turned toward him now. It had seen the distraction for what it was. The way it moved calculated, efficient, it was shifting priorities. It had decided the human was now its primary target. His grip tightened on the rifle. No point running. If it was going to come for him, he had to make it count. The alien warrior suddenly called out. It avoids the unstable energy. The pulse weapon your attack disrupted it. That is how we kill it. The human didn't hesitate. Then we need another blast. There is no second core. The creature charged. The human didn't think he moved. He threw himself to the side, barely dodging as the thing tore through the space where he had stood. He hit the ground hard, the broken rifle slipping from his grasp. The alien tried to reposition, but the creature was already adjusting. It turned sharply, cutting off the warrior's path, anticipating its movement. It was learning. The human's pulse pounded in his ears. He needed an opening, needed something. His eyes darted across the ruins, searching. There, one of the Dominion wrecks, the remnants of a downed transport. If its power systems were even partially intact. He ran. Not away, but toward the wreckage. He could hear the creature behind him, sense the weight of its presence closing in. If he miscalculated even by a second, the wreckage loomed ahead. He didn't stop. He dove inside, scrambling toward the dead control panel. His hands moved fast, prying open the exposed wiring, searching. The alien warrior was holding its ground outside, moving just enough to avoid the creature's attacks, but unable to counter. The human found what he was looking for. A damaged power conduit, sparking weakly. It wasn't enough on its own. But maybe, just maybe. He tore a piece of exposed cable free, ignoring the sharp sting as it sparked against his skin. Then, gripping the end, he twisted the wiring together. The power surged. A deep hum resonated through the wreckage. The creature hesitated. It felt it. The alien warrior noticed too. Do it! The human didn't hesitate. He shoved the exposed cable into the panel. A shockwave burst outward. Raw energy, uncontrolled, unstable. It wasn't a proper explosion. It was a pulse, a violent ripple of disruption. The creature screamed. For the first time, it staggered backward, its form breaking apart. Not just flickering. Tearing. It wasn't invincible. It could die. The human pushed himself to his feet, breathing hard. The alien warrior was already moving toward the creature, weapon raised. But before either of them could make the next move, something changed. The ground beneath them vibrated. The air thickened with an unnatural static charge. The ruins around them darkened, as if something massive had just cast its shadow over the entire battlefield. The human's gut twisted. The fight wasn't over. The rumble deepened, a low, guttural sound that didn't come from the creature, but from beneath them. The human and the alien warrior barely had time to react before the cracked terrain beneath their feet trembled. Something massive was shifting below, something that had been dormant until now. The creature, still writhing from the energy pulse, let out a distorted, shrieking sound, but it wasn't pain this time. It was something else. Recognition. A response. As if it understood what was happening. Then the ground split open. The human stumbled back as jagged rock and debris shot upward, a violent force ripping apart the battlefield. A chasm tore through the ruins, splitting the terrain wide open. And from the darkness below, something moved. It was vast, unseen, but the presence was undeniable. The alien warrior stepped back, eyes locked onto the abyss forming before them. This is not a natural collapse, it said, voice low, controlled but not unaffected. Something is waking. The human didn't need to be told twice. He could feel it, the same instinct that had warned him of predators before, the same primal awareness that had saved him countless times. Something was rising. The creature they had been fighting, this adaptive, ever-learning abomination, staggered to its feet. But instead of attacking, it turned toward the growing chasm. Its body flickered, shifting between forms as if preparing. Then it did something neither of them expected. It kneeled. The human exchanged a sharp glance with the alien warrior. "That thing's not the apex predator here, is it?" The answer came in the form of a sound. A low, resonant pulse, deep and layered, like an ancient signal stretching across dimensions. The ground buckled further, and from the depths, the first glimpse of what lay below became visible. A structure. Not rock. Not ruins. Something built. Something buried beneath the surface for who knew how long. And it was activating. The human's pulse hammered. "We need to go. Now." The alien warrior didn't argue. They turned, moving fast, weaving through the crumbling remains of what had once been a battlefield. But before they could gain distance, the kneeling creature moved. Not toward them. Toward the chasm. It stepped forward, its shifting form stabilizing. Then, without hesitation, it threw itself into the abyss, vanishing into the darkness below. The human barely had time to process what he had just seen when the pulse sounded again. Stronger. Louder. Then the air itself seemed to bend. The sensation hit like a physical force, pressing in from all sides. The wreckage, the ruins, the scattered remains of the battle, all of it began to lift. The human staggered, bracing himself as the very gravity of the area distorted. "What the hell is happening?" The alien warrior clenched its jaw. Something is rewriting the battlefield. Then they began to lift. Not by their own movement. Not by choice. By force. The chasm widened beneath them, and from the depths, something was coming up. Something immense. Something old. The battle they thought they had been fighting, the struggle to kill a single adaptive hunter, was nothing. The force dragging them downward tightened, an invisible grip pulling them toward the chasm. The human gritted his teeth, muscles straining against the unnatural force. The alien warrior beside him fought as well, but it was useless. They were caught in something beyond their understanding. Then, the darkness below moved. Not just something rising, something awakening. The structure buried beneath the battlefield was no mere ruin. It was alive. The strange energy pulsing from its depths grew stronger, warping the very air around them. The human's vision blurred as strange shapes flickered at the edges of his sight, shadows of things that weren't there, whispers in a language he didn't understand. And then silence. The force holding them released. The human and the alien warrior crashed to the ground, gasping. The weight of the air around them returned to normal, but something had changed. The battlefield was still. The chasm no longer trembled. It had stopped, waiting. Then a shape emerged from the abyss. It was not the creature that had thrown itself into the void. This was something else entirely. Towering, sleek, its form shifting like liquid metal but with a structure far too precise to be organic. Its eyes, if they could even be called that, glowed with a cold, calculating light. It was watching them. Studying. Understanding. The alien warrior spoke first, voice low. "That is no mere machine." The human's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't just a predator. This was something beyond that. A force that had been waiting for an unknown signal. And now it had been awakened. The towering figure took a single step forward, and in that instant, the human felt it, the gaze of something ancient. Not just seeing them, reading them. Then, without warning, it spoke. Not with words. With thought. A pulse of understanding slammed into the human's mind, a message so clear and absolute it left no room for interpretation. "You are not the prey." The human's breath caught. It wasn't hunting them. It was hunting something else. The alien warrior stiffened, grasping the weight of what had just been revealed. Then, what is? The machine's cold gaze turned toward the horizon. And in that moment, the human realized this battle, this war, this entire conflict was just a distraction. The true enemy had yet to show itself, and they were already too late. The human felt the weight of the machine's words settle in his chest. Not the prey. That meant something else was something even worse than what they had faced. His instincts told him to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Whatever had just awakened had already changed everything. The towering figure took another step, its form shifting, its gaze locked on the horizon. It wasn't interested in them anymore. It had something else to hunt. The human exchanged a glance with the alien warrior beside him. There was no need for words. They both understood the fight they had been a part of. The war they thought mattered was nothing compared to what was coming. A deep, low hum filled the air, and the machine raised one arm toward the distance. The human followed its gaze and saw it movement at the farthest edges of the battlefield. Shapes emerging from the dust, slow and deliberate. Not soldiers. Not creatures. Something else. The machine didn't hesitate. It launched forward, moving with impossible speed, vanishing into the distance before either of them could react. And then, the world changed. A ripple tore through the battlefield, the very air distorting. The human and the alien dropped to their knees, struggling to stay upright. The war they had fought, the enemies they had faced it all felt small now. The alien warrior exhaled sharply. We should not be here. The human nodded. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about the battle behind them, the losses, the scars. His thoughts were ahead toward whatever the machine had just gone to face. He took a breath and stood. We have to tell them, he said, his voice steady. The alien warrior hesitated, then nodded. Without another word, they turned and began the long journey back. There would be no celebration, no rest. The war they knew had ended,